Hello, everyone, and welcome to our daily work remote strategies where our coaches, over 30 coaches, give you lots of tips. This will be 20 minutes long and you can drop off right at the end of that 20 minutes or you can stay for Q&A. And that Q&A is like in-depth personal coaching with Louisa, so you can ask whatever's on your mind. To get started, Louisa is a longtime friend and colleague, and I have been to her webinars, to her workshops. I adore Louisa. She's the author of this fabulous book, Wire Your Brain for Confidence. So I'm a big Louisa fan. So I'm going to be using the tips she shares with us today. This talk is about reducing your stress and anxiety. So I'm going to turn it over to Louisa, and as I do, I'm going to launch a poll for us to be able to get some information on you. And the question in the poll, which you can answer also on Facebook, is on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is highest, how stressed are you? And would you please put in your numbers? And I'm going to turn it over to Louisa, but I will pipe in and say what the numbers are as they start to come in. How stressed are you? Louisa, welcome, and thank you for being with us to talk about this level of stress. So we're getting some responses like level 5. We'll see as they come in. Hello, Louisa.
Okay. Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here. Thank you. And I am a big fan of yours, Senya. I always have been, and I just adore you. So today I want to talk about stress and anxiety, because when we're working at home, stress can really affect our productivity levels, which ultimately affects our performance. I mean, if it's very difficult for you to even get out of bed in the morning, that's not going to be very helpful to getting work done at home. Add the stress on the fact that you are now confined, maybe with little kids or older kids, or God forbid, teenagers, maybe. You know, there's a lot more stressors, and especially if you're doing some of the homeschooling, that's just one more thing that you're adding to your workload. So lots of stress. And so, so we have average level of stress is 6. Okay, so
with a range from 3 to 9. So we've got some people who are feeling a 9 out of 10 and some who are at a 3.
Okay. All right. So we've got a range there with an average of 6. All right. So, you know, here's the thing. A lot of us may be feeling those high stress levels. So I want to talk about 2 different kinds of stress. There's kind of that low level chronic stress that can be problematic over time, especially for our health. And I also want to talk about those high level things that happen to us. Like I was talking to Senya, how yesterday I got this letter that was really upsetting, and it put me into that really high stress level. So we'll talk about both. But 3 capabilities that are really important when managing stress are to understand how to manage your emotions that occur when you get stressed out. Understand what are you saying to yourself. So what is your mental reaction? What are your thoughts with regards to what's going on at that moment when you're experiencing stress? And the third one is the physical, to recognize that every time you go into that stress mode, there actually is a physiological reaction. So I want to talk about it from those 3 different kinds of perspectives. So the first thing that I want to talk about is to understand those triggers, which can be emotional for us. So what neuroscientists have discovered is that there are 5 things that trigger us in our brains that trigger a high level of stress, especially at work. So one of them is threats to our social status. So this is the SCARF model that's put out by David Rock. And the first one is social status. So there was a study done, a meta-analysis done of 208 studies on stress. And what they found was threats to our social status. So this is where we feel we sit on the pecking order. Threats to social status released the largest amount of cortisol. So we were getting those high levels of stress and peaks when our social status was threatened. The second trigger in our brains is threats to certainty, when things are completely uncertain. Well, guess what? We are in a time where things are completely uncertain. So it's no wonder that we're under stress. Another thing that triggers us is our threat to autonomy, when we can't be free to choose and do the things we want to do. And of course, coronavirus is preventing us from doing the things we would like to do. So that's another stress trigger. Relatedness is another one. So threats to our relationships and our ability to be able to socialize. And once again, coronavirus is causing this kind of, it's impacting on our ability to relate to others. And then also a feeling of fairness, another trigger. If we feel that there's been some injustice for us or for others, this triggers stress in our brains. So I want you to think about, so we think about those 5 threats: threats to social status, threats to certainty, threats to our autonomy, our ability to do what we want to do, threats to our relationships, and threats to fairness or injustice. I want you to think about what triggers the most in your brain, because once you can understand what those triggers are, when I went through this with one of my colleagues, she called me and she said, I realize now that this idea that I am out of control, so the uncertainty and the lack of autonomy, those were 2 big triggers for her. But once she recognized what those triggers were, then she was able to do something about them. So for example, if uncertainty is a trigger, then to be able to ask questions, to be able to bring some control back into your life. And I'm going to teach you some stress reducing strategies when things are in your control and when they're out of your control. Things like relatedness. We talk a lot about this social distancing, but a lot of our talk in positive psychology is about that we are not socially distancing. We should not socially distance. We should physically distance from each other, but we should stay socially close by doing Zoom calls, by making more phone calls, by seeing each other from 10 feet away. I will often meet with people and walk on the street, and we're walking 10 feet away as we're walking, down the street with each other. So we can physically distance, but stay socially close. So take a look at, what do you think are your real triggers here? Once you can name what the triggers are, then it's easier for you to tame them. That's what I always say. You can't tame it until you name it. So knowing what your triggers are, that's one thing that can already help you. And so, for example, if you are feeling threats to your relationship, make those phone calls, get on the Zoom calls. We know that actually seeing people face to face and looking at them in the eye actually changes your physiology in that interaction with that person, and it can improve positive emotions if you're having that positive interaction. So think about that and focus in on how you can reduce the stress associated with those particular triggers. Now, another thing is that often we get stressed out when things are out of our control. And so I use a tool called the Personal Power Grid. And one of the things in the Personal Power Grid that is really important is to know that when things are in your control, the best stress strategy is to solve it, do something about it, remove the stressor. When things are out of your control, the best thing to do is to let it go, because it's completely out of your control. So the fact that you're doing anything at all is just useless worry. It's unnecessary worry. What happens is when you fill your head with worry over something that is completely out of your control, then that's eating away at your productivity. That's engaging the part of your brain, that stress, emotional part of your brain, that does not allow you to fully engage the more logical part of your brain. So that's always going to affect your productivity and your performance. So if you can ask yourself in this time, what is in my control and what is out of my control? So for now, for example, well, I can't go do whatever I want to do. I'm a speaker, so I've lost all of my speaking engagements. So, well, they've all been postponed. So I have to pivot quickly and start thinking about, okay, so the fact that all my speaking engagements have been postponed and perhaps maybe even canceled ultimately, I don't know, right? But what is in my control? Well, I can still be a speaker and do what I need to do and do it online with all of my clients. And can I easily pivot? You know, everybody kind of misconstrues Darwin's work as survival of the fittest. It's not really survival of the fittest. What his work really uncovered is that it is survival of the most adaptable. Can you turn on a dime and say, this is gone? How do I pivot and take control of this again? So that's just one example of how I've taken something that was out of my control and put it back into my control by saying, I'm going to do more online things and charge my clients for them, because I still need to feed my children and put, roof over our heads, etc. Send my daughter to university, etc. So, what else is in my control? Well, I can control to some extent whether I get the coronavirus or not by staying in my home, by washing my hands 50 times a day, not going outside, wearing a mask, when I go out. So I walk the dog every day, so I wear a mask every day, and I stay far away from people when I do that. And I really only go out once a day to walk the dog. I schedule food delivery, weeks in advance so that I don't even have to go into a store. I have more Zoom meetings. I talk with a friend if I need to have more comfort. So these are all things that are in my control. Now, how we react is also in our control. I'm part of this program, and it's run by the two owners, a woman and a man, their husband and wife, and they run this business, and they were having this Zoom webinar. And of course, they're isolating with their 4-year-old also, who happens to be there when they're doing their online webinar. And the woman was doing her presentation, and her 4-year-old was, I don't know, somehow lying across the table and kicking her in the face while she was doing this webinar. And she didn't even flinch. She just kept going, like as if nothing was, she didn't even acknowledge that this kid was kicking her in the face. And I thought it was hilarious. And she just kept going. So instead of it being a stressor and saying, oh my gosh, my 4-year-old is ruining my webinar, what's going to happen? This is embarrassing. She didn't go there at all. She just kind of said, yep, this is my reality. I'm not even going to react. I'm just going to keep going. And we all had a little chuckle about it. And that was it. So how you react can also make a difference with regards to your stress level. Now, a lot of the coronavirus is also out of our control. It's out of my control that all the speaking engagements have gone, and the economic stress of that to me, has been, 8 or 9 previous. Now I'm doing okay. I've readapted, I'm going in another direction. But the first thing that can be very, very helpful when you're going through any stressor is to accept. Acceptance is very powerful. Accept what is. I say, well, it's coronavirus. I accept it. I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm not going to be protesting about it. I'm going to accept that it is what it is, and I'm going to do my best. What is in my control is I don't watch the news at all. But what I do like to do, because this is out of my control, is I do watch scheduled news conferences put out by the municipal, federal, and provincial governments here in Canada. I'm in Canada. I do watch those, and I have 2 websites that I go to for daily statistics to understand what's going on in Canada and how we're doing as a country. So those are the only news sources I go to. I do not watch the news, because that is just going to fill my brain with a whole bunch of unnecessary stressors and negativity that is out of my control. So acceptance is one. Another thing, when things are out of your control, gratitude is another excellent thing to reduce your stress. Every day I say, I'm so grateful I'm healthy. I am so grateful I live in a country where I can, get help if I need help. I'm so grateful that I have medicine right now, that can help me in the house. I am so grateful that I have a house that I can protect myself. I'm so grateful that I have a backyard that I can get outside and get some fresh air if I really need to. So practicing self-compassion, I always say, could be worse, could be worse, could be worse. That is really, really helpful to reduce stress. I always ask, what can I learn from this? What good is coming from this when things are out of my control? What am I learning? And also, I think rethinking your standards is really important. So a parent asked me the other day, I'm so stressed out because I'm having to homeschool my kids and I'm not getting to everything. And meanwhile, I have my own business that I have to take care of. And there's, every second there's 16 pots in the kitchen sink that I have to clean. And so what we talked about, I have this concept, and it's a strategy in my book called Peace at 6. And, whereas maybe cleaning the kitchen was top of your list, that's the biggest stressor when you walk in and the kitchen is a mess, that's a big stress for you. Can you take your standard down from a 10 to a 6? Can you be peaceful for now and say, you know what? Right now it's coronavirus. I've got 3 teenagers in the house. They don't know, how to put away a pot if their life depended on it. It's okay right now. I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to say, you know what, cleaning the kitchen, I'm going to put it at a 6 right now. It doesn't have to be at a 10. I think I pulled out my vacuum cleaner for the first time last week. Okay. I didn't even know how to turn it on. All right. So if you're comparing yourself to me, you're good there when it comes to housework. So Johnny doesn't get his, math times table done on Tuesday night because you're exhausted. It's okay. It's all right. Let's try to keep the big picture here and say, can I be at a 6 on this for tonight? Can I lower that standard? It doesn't mean I'm a bad parent. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I'm just lowering my standard to get me through this right now. And then I'll go back to that 10, on these different subjects when all this is over. So hopefully those strategies, I realize it's the 20-minute mark, Senya, so I wanted to open it up if there are some questions, but hopefully those have been a few tips.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Louisa. We have a question, and at the end, maybe after we answer these questions, well, I'm just going to highlight some of the things that you're saying, the things about accepting it, I accept it, noticing what we're grateful for, and then rethinking our standards in terms of, as an example, your peace at 6. How can we get to where we're comfortable within this ruckus that's going on around us and in our homes everywhere? Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's good to do lens work, right? Like, will I care 10 years from now that Johnny didn't do his timetables? Probably not, for a night. If we did that for 6 months, okay, right?
Yeah, this education thing, I was very stressed the first couple of weeks. Are they getting everything done? And then I read something online that made me really calm down. If they're doing 1 hour of English language arts and 1 hour of math, that's enough for now. That's enough. Go outside, climb the tree in your backyard, even play tic-tac-toe with chalk, whatever it is, but that's your emphasis. So there are things that can reduce, reframe, help us reframe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. A lot of the people who come to our webinars are from tech companies, these multinational tech companies. And this is probably pressing on a lot of people's minds, regardless of the industry you're in. I'll read the question specifically. How do you deal with stress and anxiety about potential layoffs in the company? Because most tech companies will have substantial layoffs.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, don't stress about something that hasn't happened yet. Right? Our minds instantly go into catastrophe mode thinking, I'm in a tech company and probably all of these jobs are going to, we're all going to be laid off or whatever the case may be. So if you're already worrying about something that hasn't happened, that is unnecessary worry. So let's remember that uncertainty is a trigger. So can you find out as much information as possible? Talk to your boss, talk to other people who are in the know and find out, what do you think this is going to mean for jobs? You might get the right answer from your boss who says, actually, you know what, we're doing okay. We're not seeing a dip in the financials or whatever the case may be. And we don't think we're going to have layoffs. The second thing is that if you get the wrong answer and they say, you know what, we might have layoffs. Well, guess what? We knew that in tech. We've known that for 20 or 30 years in tech, right? Nobody's got a guaranteed job anymore. I used to work at IBM many, many, many years ago. And, IBM had this, this whole legend of we have never laid anybody off in 70 years. Well, guess what? The year I was there, they laid people off. It was the first year that they did it. And ever since then, we've also known. So be ready, get your resume ready. If it's out of your control, then get in control, get your resume ready, start talking to other people about where you might go. What the good news is about tech is you can do lots of things online. You don't have to be in Dubai to do that job in Dubai. So, let's start thinking about, again, adaptability and thinking about how you can prepare yourself and get yourself ready should the worst happen. And that's all you can do. That's all you can do at this point.
So it sounds like you're
And
drawing.
forget about the rest. Yeah.
It sounds like, excuse me, it sounds like you're drawing parallels even between the situation that you described about yourself and what someone in tech could do, which is you don't have speaking gigs. So that's a certainty of that tree asking your manager, what does your manager think it's going to look like? You haven't gotten the answer. Yes, Louisa, all your things are booked. Or yes, you're going to have a great job in this great department. So if you've got that no, you're saying adapt to it and start to, am I understanding you right? Start to slowly even look for what might be possible for you at a different company if this should happen. So you are actually saying, because you're saying, I think two things. One is don't stress about it before it happens, but another is start to plan your adaptability, even if you're not fully there yet. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So yeah, so that you can say, well, should this happen? My resume's ready to go. I've already started contacting my network, so they're all ready to go. I've got recruiters, ready and waiting for me, who are already looking at my resume. Get yourself, if you feel that you need that sense of control, just say, should this happen? I am ready to go. I, for example, I thought, well, what if I do get coronavirus? Do I have all the medication I need right now? And do I have a plan right now with my daughter should something happen? Well, I did. I put everything in place and said, I hope that I don't get coronavirus, but if I do, I have all the medicine I need here at home, and I know where my daughter's going to go, and I have a plan for her. After that, I don't stress about it because it's wasted energy.
Louisa, that wasn't the emphasis of our talk as we started. It was what can you do in your work and in how you're feeling. But even just the example you gave right now, I don't have an immediate backup plan. I have possible things that could happen, but I can see how having that plan and pre-contacting those people who might be your backups could give you that peace of mind. If this were to happen, here's what's going on.
Exactly. I think it's always good to have a plan if the worst, for worst case scenario. But if you're worrying about worst case scenario, not doing anything about it that's in your control, then it's just wasted worry. You can't, your body is going to take on way too much if you're doing that.
So for the person who asked the question, let us know if you have a follow-up question on that. If there's something that you agree with, disagree with, let us know if you have a follow-up question. I want to draw a couple of connections between what you just said and what, by the way, Margaret Greenberg says a big hello. She was our guest yesterday and she was excited for coming on today. Yay. I want to draw a little
Hi, Margaret.
A bit of a connection between what you're saying and one thing she said yesterday. She was talking about growing your business and that now is a great time to speak relationships-wise with contacts you have all over and not about business, just to call and ask, how are you? How are things going? How are you taking care of yourself? So just very regular conversation. And I wonder, to this person who asked, I wonder if there are ways that he or she could put this into action in a not very active way, not like, oh, this is doomsday and maybe my company will have layoffs, but like, I'm exploring opportunities. Well, so in a more calm for the person, but also for the people they're reaching out to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea because, and you never know, those people might say, hey, I'm glad you called because, and then the next thing you know, you're having this great conversation with them about a potential opportunity. I do a weekly juice. I call it my weekly juice, and I put out a weekly video blog because you want to keep your name in people's brains, right? This is how people, they might have seen me do a talk a year ago and really liked it, but they forgot. I mean, I forget what I did yesterday, right? People are not going to remember me at the top of their head. So, by doing this weekly blog, then when they're in the meeting and they say, hey, do you know any good speakers? They remember me because they just saw me in their in basket. So I think that's a great strategy, Senya, that, if people might just call people to say, hi, how are you? How are you doing in this coronavirus? It might spark something in them to say, hey, we're looking for this kind of talent. And here's this person who just called me.
Very interesting. Yeah, proactive, but without I can't quite say it, but without the turbulence.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for being with us. One question we always ask at the end is, what are you taking away from our session today with Louisa? Is it gratitude? Is it accepting things? Is it planning a strategy for something? Is it changing your standards about some compact part, like just the work or just the kids or just the household or anything else? What are you taking away today? So let's see what actions people will take as a result of today's call. Please feel free to put it into the chat and we'll read a few of them out before we end our session. So what are you taking away and what's an action you're going to take? I can already tell you from the Facebook site, people are liking and taking away knowing the 5 things. So knowing that their pressure points could be coming from that scarf piece and categorize, meaning being able to see. Here are a couple of other. Identify your stresses and plan actions on it. You know, I'm taking that one away as well, what this person wrote. So identify your stressors, but also plan that contingency. So everybody's on board. There's nobody doesn't know. Changing my standards. And one person saying, understand your triggers. So similar to this person who values the scarf model, understand your triggers and how to deal with them. Thank you, everyone.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh,
do we have a?
Yes.
Okay. One more thing that I think, exercise every day. And, you know, I hate the word exercise because people don't like it. Move your body. Just move your body every day. There's so much research on how that can reduce your stress and reduce inflammation in the body. Just move your body every day, I think, is a big one for managing stress at this time as well.
And a good one for us. And a really good one for us to end on, because it's just about noon on the West Coast and just about 3 p.m. on the East Coast. We sometimes have Costa Rica or people from England here as well. But this might be a time when you might just go outside, even for a 10-minute walk. So doing something.
Perfect.
Thank you so much,
thank you.
Thanks a ton. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again for our 20-minute strategies. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you, Tanya. Bye.